Welcome to the Pure Soul Members Zoom Live. I'm really excited you're here. We have a good group today. We have some new visitors, so I just want to kind of explain how this all takes place and works out. This hour is for you guys, so if you have any questions, those I sometimes don't even know the answers. So when you ask me the questions, I'm connecting with spirit so that spirit can relay the information to me that I'll be able to relay to you. If you have personal questions, those are okay to ask too, as long as you don't mind everybody hearing your question and hearing your answer. And when I answer the questions that are more personally, I try to do it in a way that the information that I'm sharing is actually beneficial for everybody on the Zoom. So I guess what we do is I just open it up to you guys, and whoever has questions is welcome to begin. Does anybody have a question for us to begin with, or a comment, or anything that you want to even learn about? And I'll stop talking to give you a chance to respond. You'll have to unmute yourself to talk.
I have one.
Okay, Pam. Welcome, Pam. Thanks so much for joining today. I've known Pam for a really long time, everybody, but she just joined our Pure Soul today, so I'm really glad you got to come. What is your question? And currently she's adopted a little dog, and we've kind of been back and forth about her foster puppy, and I was talking to her foster puppy whose name is Lovey, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday, and she thinks she's going to live with her, which is why I've already called her adopted, because that's just the idea of the puppy. So, okay, Pam, I'll turn it over to you. What is your question?
So I asked you about Lovey, but I wanted to ask you how my other two dogs felt about her.
And what are your other two dogs' names?
So there's Bam Bam.
Hi, Bam Bam.
And then there's Izzy over there. Izzy.
Okay. So let me just ask and see if I can get some information. So what I also do pet communication, and that's just where I can reach out and try to connect with your pet's spirit and then relay any information that they want to share. It works the same way actually that it works with people in heaven. The way that it works with people in heaven is their energy connects, and then my spirit does the translation of whatever their spirit is telling me. So when we talk about communicating with people in heaven, or plants and animals and trees and creation, it's all pretty much the same, because where we receive our information from when we connect with other spirits is actually from our own spirit. Because everything else in creation, it feels a little bit separate from us because we have a body that surrounds our spirit. And so when people in heaven communicate with you, they're not actually communicating with your human self. They're communicating with your spirit, and then your spirit actually does the translation. So the goal in connecting with either creation and nature, or friends and relatives in heaven, or even your pets that are either here on earth or in heaven, is to really create a nice friendship with your own spirit, because your spirit is where you're going to get the information, right? And your spirit is the one that's actually making that connection for you and then relaying it to you. So I am going to try to connect with both of your puppies. And what are their names? We have Bubba, and what's the other one?
Bam Bam and Izzy.
Okay, is Bubba your more expressive animal? Because when I connect with him, he just kind of, it's a he? Bubba is a he?
Bam Bam.
Oh, Bam Bam. Is Bam Bam a he?
Yes.
Okay, when I connect with him, his whole solar plexus bounces out of him in blue light. So that means he has all of his expression in his tummy. So you can't stop him from his communication. You're not going to stop him from barking.
No.
It's just the way he is. So he doesn't have any problem with Lovey at all, because if he did, he would let her know and she will listen. So okay. I kind of feel like he already has that kind of relationship with her. Now, what's the other one's name? I'm sorry, I forget once I'm connected.
It's okay, Izzy.
Izzy.
Yeah.
Izzy is your baby?
Yes.
Okay, because I feel like Bam Bam shares well, but Izzy does not. No. So there might be a little bit of jealousy that's going to take a few months to work out, but once it's worked out, it's going to be fine. So once they realize that they're supposed to be friends and no one is going anywhere, she's not a visitor. Have you had other visitors? Have you had other fosters that come in and go out?
No.
Okay.
I've had other dogs come and visit, but like not.
And they come in and then they leave.
Yeah.
Okay. Izzy is still wondering, is she leaving? So she's not, she doesn't feel, she's not going to let her in until she knows she don't have a choice.
Oh, okay. Is that true, Izzy? Okay.
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 But I do think it's all going to work out.
Okay.
Okay. So everybody, when I was connecting with her pets, I did that same experience. What I did is I asked my spirit to connect with her pets. Now, when you do that and when you try that, and you can try it with your pets, you can just try it. And you just kind of hold them and look at them and try to connect your love to their love. So when I say to try to connect to their spirit, what I'm really saying is our spirit is love. And the love that you feel for your pets, which is awesome. You can try this with your children or with your pets because it's an unconditional experience. You send your love to their love. And then when you feel that, like, you're connecting, and you'll feel it because there will be a shift inside of you. Everybody has hugged their animals before. And we all know that sometimes we get these feelings when we hold them and hug them, and something inside of us shifts. So you've had that before. That will happen as you practice this thing with them. So do that, connect to that love experience, and then ask a question. Just say, how you doing today? That's all you have to do. And you do that in your mind, like, how are you doing today? And you visualize that kind of going into from your love to their love, however you want to visualize that. It can be on the wings of a bird. It can be just floating words. It can be however you want to visualize sending it to them. And then sit for a moment, give them a minute to kind of bring that in. And then whatever comes into your mind next. It could be what comes into your mind is when you were a little girl or a little boy, you had your favorite blanket and you were hugging it. That seems like, why would my dog tell me about that? But it's not what your dog is saying. How did you feel in that memory? Did you feel okay in that memory? Were you happy? Were you loved? Did you feel protected? What was your experience from that memory? Because when your spirit translates, she or he has to translate according to the way that you will understand it, right? So if you get a memory or a vision back of, like, you watched a TV show one time and people were having a fist fight, then that might mean that your puppy or your kitty is feeling frustrated today or feeling combative or rebellious. And if you try this with your animals, you'll start to really find this flow of communication with them. So try it out. You'll be surprised how connected you are in a verbal way, almost in that inner voice communication. This is how animals communicate. Hello, Penny. One time, my dog was barking at the back door and it was driving me crazy. And I was like, okay, forget it. So I start barking. I'm like, "Ruh, ruh, 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 ruh." And my dog turns around, looks at me and says, "You don't speak dog." That was the vision translation that came back. She literally turned around and looked at me and she was like, "You don't speak dog." And I was like, well, I'm barking. And my dog explained to me that when dogs bark at each other, they are not communicating with one another. They are finding a space of balance and connection. Their barking is like a vibration. It's not actually the communication itself. It just connects their soul to the other dog's soul. And once that connection is made from barking, you can have a dog bark down the block, right next door, however that happens. But you'll notice that they'll go out and they'll bark really, really loud, and then they get silent. And they get silent with the neighbors' dogs and their friend dogs. And they do that because once the silence happens is actually when the communication between the animals occurs. Then they bark and they readjust their vibration. Now they can communicate again. And that's a lot of times what they do with you, which is why they might get excited when you walk in the door. And it's until they connect with you and their soul touches your soul, now they're going to be quiet. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, we can move on unless anybody has any questions about what we just talked about with our puppies and our kitties and our other animals. All animals communicate.
I would like to ask a question about the dogs, since we're on the dog subject. So Our dogs, I don't know. I think they just figured us out and they rule us. But, a lot of what I've noticed happening lately is when the grown-ups are talking with each other, they start barking. It's kind of like when you had the little kids and you go to the bathroom and they're like banging on the door, or when you're on the phone, they, "Mom." I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, did I teach them that this was okay to do this? And
No,
our one
but
dog is blind, so he does a lot of air snapping and and so many times I just, we give up, say, okay, I'll talk to you later. We just leave, and then the dog is happy. It's like, what the heck?
dogs are brilliant. And let me explain why. Our dogs, just like us, our animals, cats included, they have soul jobs. So I've spoken to all of you at some point, and at some point I have told you you're an empath, you're a truth speaker, you're a rescuer, you're a facilitator. All of you have a job in your soul, that your soul does this job whether you like it or not. It's just the function of your soul. Animals are the same. All animals have a soul job. And you can tell when you get connected to them, they have chakras too, right? And they're very similar to ours, except they have some more on the pads, and they have their human connection chakras are actually located on their shoulder blades. So when you want to really connect with an animal, if you massage their shoulder blades right in the back of their neck, these are chakras there that go along with the animals, and it kind of connects them to your vibration of human. So in the idea that all animals have a soul job, I'll give you an example of my dog Penny, who recently passed away, but she's literally sitting here because I was freaking out that she wouldn't be here in the Zoom, and she told me she would, and she is. But her soul job is empathy. So when she came to us, I would notice, how when you're crescendoing into an emotion, like you may be crescendoing into a worry about a particular situation, or you may be sad, or you might feel the anger and you kind of like start to rise. What animals experience is that shift of your energy. So their barking is in response to your vibration. So it just so happened that I can get very angry very quickly. And anybody that knows me knows that I am as equally angered person as I am a sweet person. But, so we all have those polar opposites of ourselves. So on the flip side, I can get really mad really quick. What my dog Penny did for me is that when I would write, how right when you're going to feel that thing rise up in you with emotion, she would catch it every time. And it took me a few times to recognize that she was picking up on me. But my energy would start to change, my emotion would start to change, and she would start barking and barking and barking. And until I calmed myself down, I would be like, okay, Penny, I know. And then I'd take a breath, and then I would feel it go down inside of me, and then she would be quiet. And so we're a little worried about my husband because, well, she's not here anymore, and who's going to get me not mad when he makes me mad? So, and that's, you understand what I'm saying. And so what I think your animals were letting you know is there was something in the conversation that didn't balance out for them, that shifted in vibration. Maybe you were worried about something, maybe you raised your tone of voice, maybe your husband did. So that is a reason why they interrupt your conversation. So when you stop talking and you walk away, well, everything is balanced now, right? So some of your animals are going to be more sensitive to a particular person in the family. Like a lot of them are very connected to Marissa. So we have Lily, and Lily, we can't even laugh, and she's already barking because she has to get involved. If any of the other dogs go through anything, she's right on the spot and reacting. If any emotion in this house is expressed, she's already participating in that emotion. So you'll recognize the different soul job that your animals have. If you notice that when you're sad, one of your dogs or animals comes up to you, kind of snuggles you a little more, they know because they feel you. Because in unconditional love, there is no separation. So they're not separate from you. Like your children, when they're little, they're not separate from you. There's no separation between you. And that's anytime there's an unconditional love connection, because there's no separation. This is how they experience what you're experiencing. And they are here to help us with that. to teach us that, to teach us how to calm ourselves or how to control our experiences in a way emotionally that's more beneficial. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gives me a lot to think about, because we have 2 dogs and one is attached to me and the other one's attached to my husband. And the one that air snaps and shoos me out of the room is my husband's dog. So I'm like thinking in my head, is Ramsey's picking up a vibration from Mark that I'm interrupting them? So he's, getting me, or I don't know. I'll have to give that.
Yeah, you never know. It's like,
so
and
it's like, I can't even talk to my husband. I can't go to his room and talk to him, because this dog.
Sometimes they're very protective. Like we have one that really, really loves my husband as long as she's not with me or my daughter. But if she's with me or my daughter, then she becomes our protector. And then she won't even let him near us. And she goes crazy and wants to snap at him and bite him. But if she's not in charge of protecting us, then she loves him and she's cuddling them and everything. So they will bond. They do take that one person you're their job. You are why they are here, right? Yeah. We think we're there for them.
Yeah. Well, ironically, Ramsey's, who loves my husband, and it does seem like he's protecting my husband against me or anybody else who wants to talk to my husband. Ironically, my husband was accidentally bitten by him when he and Andy were fighting, and he broke it up. And for some reason, a couple days later, my husband went into septic shock from the dog bite bacteria and nearly died. And so he went through months of recovery, lost 9 toes and a couple fingers or whatever. It's a terrible story, but so it's like the dog that almost killed him is now protecting him. So it wasn't intentional though.
No, it wasn't intentional.
It's a little ironic because it's like, geez, he's like a watchdog. Anyway, that gives a lot of clarity about dogs though.
It does. And all animals are that way. And you'll notice like even horses and cats and all animals. I went downstairs the other day after Penny passed away, and I went downstairs. The guinea pigs never talked to me. And then I went downstairs the other day and the one guinea pig is like, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, you never talk to me. And I came up and I told Marissa, I go, they must know that Penny's not here because that one never talks to me, never says hello, never says anything. And they started saying hello. So they are very intuitive and can make those connections for you. So that was a great question, Pam. Thanks. Okay. Anybody else have a question or a comment?
I had a question.
Carrie, hello.
Hi. Okay, so I am.
If anybody needs a dog, though, you can always connect with Carrie because she runs a foster and has a bunch of puppies all the time and rescues, and her house is like Grand Central Station for any animals, goats also. So,
oh my God, that's so funny. Pam just messaged me. She's like, you should ask Nikki about the goats.
Yeah.
And then he just brought up the goats. What was I gonna ask? Oh no, I was gonna try to ask a people person, people question, like regarding like, I haven't talked to you a long time about, I'm always talking to you about my animals, right? Because I'm so consumed with all my fosters. So I would ask you about Gemma, the little pit that I have right now. She's not going anywhere. I know you're gonna say that. She's not going anywhere. She's gonna be fine. She's staying here. Her 2 puppies will get adopted. But as far as, so James has been asking a lot for a stepdad lately. He wants a stepdad, just not because I asked him, I said, I'm not gonna be mad or anything, but just tell me, what do you want in a stepdad that I don't do for you? Are you looking for something particular? I'm like, I'm just asking. It's not, nothing's wrong. So I was just thinking, like, is Matt still like communicating with him? Does he still have that bond that they used to have when James was so much littler? Because now he's 7, right? And so at 5 is kind of like the turning point. And I don't feel like I've kept that whole bond, spiritual bond going. I mean, we have the 3 lit deers in the backyard, and the dad always falls over. We go and we stake him back up and he falls over. And I'm like, well, that's just your dad.
That is just Matt.
He's here. Matt. He's just laying there. We have our scarecrows. We have the mom, we have the kid, and then we have the ghost. The ghost is dad, is Matt. So, I mean, I'm trying to make it lighthearted for him too, but so I just want to see like if he's still bonding with him, and then if I should send James to the rainbow group at school where they talk about the loss of a loved one, which I think it's really cool that they're doing this at the school, even though it's like kindergarten through 8th grade. There've been a couple kids in his class that have lost their dad suddenly this past year. So I guess that's my question, is basically James, how James is with Matt and how that's
Okay.
Or is that too
So,
deep?
no,
right
it's
now?
not too deep at all, because it leans toward other information. So we have these phases of life, and I think we talked about them the last time, but we have the 0 to 7 phase, which is a very spiritual phase. And this is where we as children, we are encouraged to live our experience the way we feel it. So it's okay if we're upset. It's okay if we don't like Auntie Barbara. It's okay if we want a cookie before dinner. Anything that we feel, our caregivers, our family, and our friends, they encourage us to live our life based on how we feel. And because we don't have anything that tells us we can't live in our truth, there is no separation from heaven. So when children are small, heaven is just like earth. There is no distinction between them. So in the early years after Matt passed, and James could experience him in a way that didn't signify any type of separation. But the next phase of our life goes into more of a human condition phase, and this is traditionally about 7 to 14 years old. So at this time of our life, this is where we're trying to live up to our friends. We want everybody to like us. We have to listen to our parents. Now we don't get a cookie before dinner. So in this phase of our life, we're kind of inundated and taught how to be a human being and live in this structure of what's expected and what's not. And that separates us from that heaven perspective. Now, when does a child flip from, heaven connection to more of a dominantly earth connection? That's usually a, hi, sweetheart, don't you look pretty? And look at that hair. I just love her hair. But usually at that time, you can think of like a child's first lie. When a child tells you a lie and they know they've told you a lie, they've just chosen humanity and not spirit. So that will kind of put that separation in place. Once that separation is in place, then they might not perceive their friends and relatives or their angels or their imaginary friends that they used to have when they were little. And it's not because any of those people or those connections have dwindled. It's just that our eyes start to see more human than spirit, and things are tangible, and our 5 senses are so developed when we're hitting 7 through 14 that that's where we gather our information. Our information stops being internal and becomes external to us. So the bond and the connection is still there. It is traditional, and I want to explain this part of it just to kind of give you an understanding of what could be happening. I know this little girl that I have regular sessions with, and when she was a little girl, she experienced a lot of problems because she was talking to heaven, and it was a really difficult thing for her school and for her parents. And she kind of became like mute, like she didn't want to talk to anybody, and she just couldn't find herself. So she was about 6 or so when I started to connect with her. And I saw her all the way up until she was about 12 years old. And once she turned 12 years old, which is a couple years before the 3rd phase, which is balance from 14 to 21. So I met with her coming right out of her spiritual phase, right into her human phase. And my goal at connecting with her was to be able to create a balance between the human self and the spirit self, so that she didn't have to say goodbye to heaven. She didn't have to say goodbye to her grampy that she saw and would spend time with and get messages from, just because she was in this transition phase into her human experience. And then I started to teach her how to hear her spirit, how to talk to heaven, how to keep that connection going. When she was 12 years old, she told her mom, I don't want to see Nikki anymore. So they came for their last session and I said, okay, honey, I said, I'm not going to see you till you're 19 years old. And she's like, what? No, I don't think so. I said, yeah, I'll see you when you're about 19 years old, because you have to go into a balance phase now. And her spirit, I felt, led her in the right direction, that she wasn't going to be talking to me between like 12 and 19, because now she has to put in balance what she feels and what she knows. And so when that process is complete, then she enters into a whole new cycle of her life. And that's where those phases start once again. And that's when she would come back to me. And she did. I'm once again having weekly sessions with her. So what James is experiencing is the human aspect. And what you would want to do is enunciate some of those things that you're enunciating. Oh, the dad deer fell down. That's totally your dad in heaven. Oh, your dad would have been proud of you. Oh, that's totally what your dad would have said, right? And so that's how you kind of keep it flowing within him, is not to stop making those connections. Oh, your dad had that same face. You know, when your dad told fibs, that was the same face he gave. And when your dad was excited, oh, that's the same face he gave. Because if you can connect their humanity to Matt's humanity, then that gives him that earthly, I know how my dad is because I'm the same way, right? And so we get to have that. When he is asking for a stepdad, and this, when you were asking me about that, Matt did come in and he did show me a vision, but the vision he showed me was more of a reference of my life. You guys all know, because I've talked to you all and you've taken some of my workshops, that my relationship with my dad was a little bit tumultuous. And so I had a friend in the military who, her car broke down. And I said, oh my God, what are you going to do? She's like, I'm going to call my dad. I'm like, why? The heck is your dad going to do for you? So I could not understand how, you know, when you're a little girl and it's your daddy and you're a grown woman and you have kids of your own, but you could call your dad and he's going to help you because you just have that feeling with him. Well, I never had that feeling. And I couldn't understand what that meant. And then I had an experience where I needed a lawyer and I got a lawyer. And that lawyer, I don't know, we went to lunch one day and we went downtown and I was going to cross the street with him, but apparently I don't look at traffic and almost got hit by a bus. And that man yanked me out of traffic. And then he put his arm in my arm and he held my arm like that all the way down the street. And for 1 second, when I looked at him, I was like, oh, that's what having a dad feels like. Right? So exactly what you did in asking him, what are you looking for in a dad? What do you think a dad would do? And what do you think a dad would make you feel? Then you can say, well, who in your life does those things for you? Like, does Papa do those things for you? Does this person do those things for you? Would you like to join like a big brother thing? So you like have a guy to hang out with that isn't your grandpa and isn't your uncle, but like that's just your friend. So yeah, I think that would be great to do like that big brother thing or something where he would have the qualities that he's looking for, because according to Matt, he's looking for what I was looking for. I have a dad. I know my dad. I even love my dad, but I don't feel that thing that you're supposed to feel. And I think that's what he's searching for. So sending him to the rainbow thing, maybe, I don't know if Britt remembers that. Britt, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, do you remember?
It's my first time. I'm not technologically savvy, so I've just been hanging back.
Oh, wait, that's the wrong Britt. My Brittany.
Oh,
Brittany
you're
Manning? Brittany Marin?
Hi, Mama.
Hi.
What race thing?
Do you know that your name still says Manning, but you're married now and you're a Marin and not a Manning?
I know, I have to fix my Zoom settings.
Okay, so do you remember going to Rainbow when you were young after your dad left us?
I remember going to like a therapy session. Was that at Rainbow?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you don't remember. I was wondering if you could remember, if you could talk about it. But when Brittany was little, after her dad and I got divorced, she experienced a lot of those same feelings of loss, like not having a dad, like her friends had a dad, but she didn't really have a dad. And so she was missing that. And I did take her to the Rainbow, and I thought they were wonderful. And they did activities with her. And I'm sorry you don't remember, but that's good. That means it wasn't as traumatic as I envisioned it to be. But it did make a difference. And there were other children there, and she did get to have individual connections with people. So let me ask Matt. Hold on one second. Did you have braces, Carrie?
No.
Well, then if you didn't have braces, so what I did is I asked Matt, should he go to Rainbow? And his response was, if Carrie had braces. So if you did not have braces, it means that what's inside of him is a curiosity to know what it feels like to have that one guy in your life, right?
Okay.
But that he's not in a position where there's like an overwhelming sadness that he would need that. If he's curious and he wants to go, Matt does give both thumbs up. But it's not like, oh, if I don't do this, is this going to negatively affect him? That's not how he's coming through at all.
I haven't even asked him if he wanted to do the Rainbow at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't brought it up to him. I just saw that a lot of kids were, I mean, but these kids, like, they're in his class, they lost their dad suddenly overnight in a heart attack, you know, so they're trying to, and the kids are like, no, my dad didn't die, you know, and it's like, well, no, your dad did die.
Yeah, and that may make something that has always been so natural to James, that's natural for James. It might make him really be like, how did my dad die? What happened to him? You know, and that he might develop and pick up on some of their tragedy and apply that. And I don't know if that has to be applied. So if he wants a social aspect, okay. But it's not something that Matt is giving me this whole like, yeah, he should go.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question about that or anything connected to that, to the phases of our life or what we experience in those phases? No? Okay.
Well,
and do we have,
can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Just briefly, I remember years ago, because I lost my husband at I was 30. Anyway, I had a 10-month-old and a 6-year-old. And I read this book, and it talked about when children lose someone, they grieve once as a child, and then post-puberty, they'll grieve again a second time. And I don't remember what book I was reading. And by golly, if my son didn't do it again after, you know, he went through this whole grieving process a second time. And I was just talking to someone about that yesterday, about how it happens twice that I read this. And I didn't really kind of understand that. Does that have to do with these phases?
Yes, because there's 21 year, we go through like a 21-year cycle. In that cycle of 21 years, there are 3 phases. First phase is spiritual, second phase is human, third phase is balance. We are always trying to live our life from a balanced perspective. So if we master balance, the next 21 years, they're going to be easy. If we don't master balance, then they get more difficult and we repeat the same traumas, the same experiences, the same heartaches. Even our life will display like, oh, I had a dad that was not nice to me and abandoned me when I was a child. And I'm experiencing that all over again because I just married a man who left me, right? So those, it's not so much what you're trying to bring into balance is the original pain that didn't come into balance. So if a child, let's say, has an experience between 0 and like 5 years old, this is going to be natural, whatever, like if they lose a parent or a grandparent, that death is going to feel natural to them. They won't notice much of a difference because they'll have that spirit to spirit connection, which for them at the time is normal, no separation. When they turn like 7 to 14, now they're human. Now they can't see grandma. Now, 5 years after grandma died, now they're going to experience, why don't I have a grandma? Right? And that's in that 7 to 14 phase. Then we go into balance, 14 to 21. And this is where we're like, okay, I can still feel grandma. I get her signs. I know she's here. So even though she's gone, I can handle it because the first part of my life said there's no separation. And she used to visit me and talk to her. And now I just feel her. So you see that the first part of their life, they had connection with grandma. The second part of their life, they had no connection to grandma. The third part of their life, they're like, but okay, I still feel her, but I can't see her. Is that okay? So now that's a balance. If they hit this balance in that 14 to 21, they're good to go. But they are going to experience that same death 3 different times in the first 21 years.
3 different
with
times.
the hope that they reach balance from that 14 to 21. Now, if they don't, then from 21 to 28, you begin a very human process. So now 21 to 28, they'll experience that again from a human perspective. Then from 28 to 35, they'll revisit that death again, but in an emotional or internal experience until they get to 35 to 42, which is the completion of our next 21 years, where they should be in balance about it. And you can think of it kind of like most of us, usually by the second cycle of 21 years, like around 42, that's when we are pretty much our authentic self. We're done kissing the universe's ass. We're done over obligating and extending ourselves. Our friend group shrinks down, right? And only the people that are beneficial to our soul, that we can be of benefit to, those are the people that stay close, right? Those are the people that we are willing to really, share our soul with, where we start to recognize that we're important too. And that usually starts to happen. We start getting sick of people about 26. And then by 35, we're like, I'm done. I'm just going to have these certain people, right? So to answer your question, I'm a little bit off on a tangent, but to answer your question, we can experience the same one thing over and over and over until we can find a balance with it. Sometimes that balance comes from exhaustion. It comes from over and over and over, and I just can't find peace with it. And you kind of numb out to it, right? And so the best way to avoid the numbing out is to recognize the gift in the negative. Even though it's bad, even though our perception is this is negative and this hurts, what gift did God wrap up in there for us? Because he knows that earth itself, we are mortal people. We are going to die in our humanity, right? We are going to have problems. There's a lot to deal with in earth, and God knows that, but this isn't his playground, right? So he works within all of this negativity that swims around us every day. So if his hand is in everything, even if somebody else's hand created a pain or a difficulty for you, if his hand is in it and you believe that, then find what he touched in that for you. And that reduces the exhaustion of repeating it over and over. And it reduces that level of numbness, because in numbness, you feel nothing. You feel nothing. But if I don't want to feel numb in the death of my mom, right? I want to make sure that I enjoy feeling her presence here with me, and she flickers the lights and I get to be happy, even though it's sad that she died. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. How are we? Okay. What is our next topic, or does anybody have a comment about that?
I do, Nikki. It all makes sense. What her face was that Sue, her question. I'm doing the math for where I am right now. And
I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, I'm 52. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I'm just like, I'm in a phase of moving into balance again. And I'm just like claiming it and doing everything I can to get that balance. And it is from sheer exhaustion. And I said, no more, enough already.
Right.
So yeah, wow. They're just like, aha.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, Sue, for asking that question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
you know, we started off talking about children grieving, and then Nikki's going on these tangents and exhaustion, all the different phases, and I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, she's talking about me now, and I'm 61, and I'm still exhausted. I don't know. Yes, got it.
Okay, so then I won't take that as a negative. Some of my tangents are okay.
No,
No,
what I'm
this
saying-
was good.
you were spot on, is what I'm saying. You were like, I don't know if you're zooming in on me or something, what's going on with my crazy life, because I'm a hot mess at the moment of sheer exhaustion.
I think that one of the things that's really confusing is if we don't know what phase of the cycle we're in. You know, like I'll find myself going, I don't know why it bothers me now. It didn't bother me like 3 years ago. Like, I don't know what the problem, I don't know why it's bothering me now. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm in the phase of spirit. Everything is supposed to feel nice to me. No wonder that's pissing me off now. Right. So you will go back and second guess yourself. Like, that didn't bother me before. Why is it bothering me now? So sometimes the mismatch is because if you're not clear what phase you're in, it's hard to get out of the phase.
But Nick, the phases don't actually run the same every 21 years, though, right?
No, from in the first 21 years, you start with spirit and then go human and then go balance. In the second 21 years, you start with human, then you go spirit, then you go balance. In the third 21 years, you start with spirit, then human, then you do balance. You always end with balance. Always the last phase is balance. But the first two phases, the first set of 7 years, you always start with the opposite one. So the first time in life, you're spirit. And then 21 to 28, you start with human. And then 42 to 49, you start with spirit. So you always either start the 21 years with human or spirit. But you always end with balance. Balance is always the last one. Our goal is to be balanced all the time. So if you know that you're in a human phase and you make the decision, you know, like when you're 21 to 28, you're in a human phase. So when you're in a human phase, it's everybody wants to know what you're going to do in your life. So what are you going to study? You're going to get married? You're going to have a house? What kind of car you're going to drive? How much money do you want to make? Are you going to invest in your future? So you have all these human decisions to make, and you make them from the basis of 21 to 28, which is human. But then you get 28 to 35. Now you're spiritual, which means everything you did from 21 to 28, you better feel something about it. And you will. And now you might say, next time I buy a house, I'm definitely going to have a porch. I should have studied what I wanted to study. Sorry about the dog. I should have studied what I wanted to study when I was in college. Or maybe I should have married that guy. Or maybe I really don't want to live in this state. So now that you're 28 to 35, you review all the decisions you made from 21 to 28, and you throw away what doesn't feel good, and you keep what does feel good. And then you live your life in that capacity, balancing out, okay, in human phase, I decided I was going to, work as an engineer. But really, I have a friend, and she's not on tonight, but she's also part of our Pure Soul. She is like brilliant, and she's some kind of chemical microbiologist. Like, she's a doctor. She's a doctor. And she started her doctor thing and was working at Northwestern, and that's her career. And she realized she really loves kids and really loves cheerleading. So she quit being a doctor and she opened a gym. And now all the kids go, and she's been running it for years, but she's a doctor. So when she got into that 28 to 35 phase, she realized that this is what actually made her feel what she needed to feel. See? So she'll probably go back to it at some point when she's done doing the gym or doing the cheer for the kids. But that's what I'm talking about. We make these decisions, and hey, we accomplish them. We like them, but maybe they don't fill us the way that we had expected that they would fill us till we get to that phase, right? So if we can successfully throw out what doesn't serve us, keep what serves us, and make decisions moving forward that address both sides, then we always stay in balance, right? Because if I'm 15 and there's a party down the street and I want to go, I'm in balance. My mom says, don't go, I go. The police bring me home. My mom says, I taught you better than that. I said, well, in the first 7 years, you said I get to do whatever I want. In the second 7 years, you said I don't get to do anything I want. Now I'm in the third set of 7 years and you didn't tell me how to pick one. I don't know which one to pick. I don't know if I should go with what I feel or go with what you say, right? So our teenagers, they're not really hormonal and crazy. They just literally have no idea which part to pick. What education do I pick? Do I pick the education that you told me that I can do whatever makes me happy? Or do I pick the education where you said I have to get up and go to school and I don't get the cookie before dinner? I don't get whatever I want. And that's where the decision process comes in. And that's the first time we experience it is 14 to 21.
So everyone has these same phases at approximately the same years.
Yes,
right?
Some people start at like, the phase is 28 to 35. A lot of people start that at 26. Some kids start that human phase, 7 to 12, 7 to 14. Some kids start at 5. So you'll see that there's a little bit of variation in play by a couple years.
Okay.
A couple years forward, a couple
What
years
phase are you in at
backward.
61?
What phase at 61? See, now I got to do my head. So 21 to 28 is human, 28 to 35. Huh?
I actually did it. You're in human between 56 and 63, and then you go into balance at 63. I actually did the numbers.
Okay, so she
Wait a
got them
minute.
all written out. So
Yeah, what are I need these numbers. What are the numbers? I have 21 to 28 is human.
28 to
28 to
35 is
35.
spiritual.
Uh-huh.
35 to 42, balance. 42 to 49, spiritual. 49 to 56, human. 56 to 63, balance.
Sorry, I had that off. I'm glad we did that.
63 to 71, is that going to be right? 63 to like 71 is going to be human again. I'll make a chart. I'll send it out to all the Pure Soul members. I have it written down.
Oh, so I'm in human phase. Okay.
So
I
you're
gotta
in
keep
human
the
phase,
month.
which means that you have a redo of your life. Like at this, and when we get into human phases, that's when we change our job. That's when our career changes. That's when we decide we want to have another baby. That's when we decide, let me invest in my future. Let me make a retirement. I think I'm going to buy a new car. When you're in spirit phase, you're like, I don't really need a new car. It's fine. I don't mind. It's fine. I don't need that. But in a human phase, you're like, I'm getting a new car. Some
did that.
people, yeah, right. And your job is changing.
Finished
And you
my
got
job interview, everything. Yeah.
Right. Right. So you'll notice that in the human phase, that's when a lot of decisions about work, life, relationships, a lot of that happens in that human phase. You're making new plans now for things. So
That makes sense.
Thank you.
So after this comes spirit. So after this comes spirit then? Or am I going to balance?
what are you in?
Human. Oh, the next one's spirit then, right?
Spirit. Yeah. That's where all the decisions you make from 21 to 28, you better really love them. So at this phase, so in the next 7 years, you're like, I have to redo stuff. Now I got to throw that away, keep that, throw that away, keep that. And sometimes that happens, right? So
Yep.
it's exciting when we get to change things, but it's really nice when we find a level of peace that everything that we've changed, it's the way we want it now. We feel good now, right?
Okay.
Any other topics for today? We have 8 minutes. Marissa just gave me the timeline.
Do you want me to do my questions?
Sure. What's your question? I think we actually answered it, but go ahead.
No, not quite.
Okay. What's your question?
So everybody has a memory that defines their state of being.
Yes.
Everybody has a different age that happens.
Yes.
So why is it a different age for everyone?
Okay, so when Linda's talking about the state of being, I don't know how many of you, but I offer a series of workshops called Alma for the Beginning. And in the first workshop, you define a moment in your life that it defines who you are. It defines your gift. It defines your strength. It defines your weakness, your expectation. Then it's kind of a good summary of who you are and how you are in the world. And this traditionally happens by an experience that is impactful to you as a child. A lot of people, when we experience our life, we can be conditioned at various points of our life. It's not so much the age that matters, but I had conditioning at 16. I also had conditioning at 4. I also had conditioning at 5. But for the state of being, when I had my awakening experience and I understood what I understood in that experience, which that's what has resulted in the workshops that I offer. It's what happened to me, what I discovered in my spiritual awakening. And when I came out of that, I had a state of being memory, but I was 16 in that memory. And I noticed that as I was teaching the class or I was talking to people, that the ages of their memories were different. So some people had a memory come to their mind when they were 5. Some people had a memory come to their mind when they were 2. One lady, when she was in the crib, she has a memory of it. And so these are the moments that define our state of being. What I realized, because I wondered why, when I came out of my experience of awakening, why didn't I have a childhood memory? Why was my memory from when I was 16 and every other person I asked, they have these very younger childhood experiences? So I prayed on that. And I did ask God, why is my memory when I'm so much older? And the response that came back to me was, there's no such thing as a memory. And so what I realized is that my spirit could show me that memory of my dad, and that memory of my dad. The way that we arrive at our state of being is, I can ask you all, what is the first memory of your childhood that pops into your head from when you were a little kid? Okay, everybody actually got their memory, right? Everybody here, a memory has popped into your heads. That memory defines your state of being. So when I got the response, there is no such thing as a memory, I thought of the memory. And the memory was, my dad kicked me out when I was 16 for the final time. That was the memory that came after my awakening. So when I heard memories aren't really a real thing, there's no such thing as a memory, I was like, well, okay. And then they all came to me every single time that my dad kicked me out. When I was 7, when I was 9, when I was 11, when I was 12, all of the memories were the same. And the thing that you arrive at with your state of being is, it's not the memory that's important. It's what derived from the memory. And each of those times I felt abandoned, I felt rejected, I felt lonely, I was angry, I was in shock. Those same emotions repeated themselves for all of those memories with my dad. And then it clicked. They repeated with my first husband. You know, when I was in high school, I was going to go on a dance with this guy. We were going to my high school dance and he dumped me for my friend. I was in shock. I was angry. I was sad. I was disheartened. I couldn't believe it. I felt rejected. I felt abandoned. Oh shit, there's those memories again. Or there's those feelings again. And then I had an experience where I got laid off at my job. I felt abandoned. I felt rejected. I felt angry. I felt sad. I was in shock. Oh my God, there's those feelings again. Memory doesn't matter. It is what you learn from that memory about your emotional reaction, because those become your standard set of reacting. Right? And so it doesn't really matter what memory, or if you're younger than the next person who has it, because when we ask our soul, when I ask you, what's the first memory that pops into your head from childhood, I am evading and avoiding your humanity. If I asked you to tell me humanly, I want to know what your first memory is from childhood, then I have to activate your brain. So when I do that, if I want your humanity involved, I'm going to say, think of 3 memories of your childhood, pick your favorite one, and tell me what it is. Take a second with that. Okay, now what are you all doing? You're all searching for memories. You're going to get 3 memories in your head, and then you're going to pick and choose. So you need your human brain to decide which memory to tell me, right? But if I ask you, tell me the first one that pops into your head, your brain is not involved, right? Something just shows up all by itself. It shows up. And when the memory comes, all of you have a face change. Everybody's like, wow. Yeah. All of you respond. What are you responding to if it's your own brain thinking of the memory? It's not your brain, it's your soul. Your soul is the one that picks the memory to throw into your third eye. So when your soul throws that memory into your eye, I don't care how old you were. That's actually just the memory your spirit wants me to use. And if it's true, I will find similar reactions to you in a buzz. You'll get that information and you'll look back at your life and you're like, yeah, in fact, I always feel that way for a lot of things, not just that memory, right? So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good. Does anybody else have a question about that? And does that make sense to everybody?
That was a good question.
That was a
helped.
great question.
It was.
So I will teach Almapura online if, I'm going to get it online. I haven't decided if I'm going to do like a live Zoom for it or if I'm going to like put it online, so people can do it like automatically. So
I'll join in on that.
Yeah, I'll do that one. I was like,
perfect.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Yeah, it's a fun class. It is actually, the whole series is like,
it's
mind-blowing.
Highly recommend it. Highly recommend all. How many did we do, Nikki? I did the whole thing, right?
Yeah, you did the whole thing. You did all of Almapura at the beginning, and then did you come back for number 2? Did you do this? Did you do it again?
I did a couple of them, like 5 or however many you have. I did
5,
them all.
Do you remember the other Cheryl?
Yeah.
In the class, the one that was awe, her state of being was awe.
Yeah.
She came back a second time to do the workshops a second time. And I was like, you're back? And she's like, yeah, and I'm still in awe. And that was like totally her state of being. So she loved the class because everything puts her in awe. But yeah.
But she learned new things the second time around.
She did learn.
There were still more ahas the second time around.
Right. That's what I was saying. Like her
ones,
state of being actually worked out true.
Right. So, exactly. No, that was a powerful session. People were just like mind blown.
Yeah.
Like everything made sense then. Like our whole life made sense.
Yeah.
So highly recommended those who haven't.
Thanks,
and I'll
Cheryl.
do it again.
Okay, thanks. I know you guys that we are at our time today, but is there any last questions or comments that anyone has for me today?
It was great.